Good evening. Okay, just got the pop-up with the recordings in progress. Let me start over. Good evening and welcome to the Beaverton Library Advisory Board meeting. We're glad you're here. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. Due to recent changes to Oregon Public Meetings Law, our meetings will now be recorded. Once the video is processed by the city's web team, it will be published on our board's webpage for public viewing. All public attendees are invited to participate in the meeting at the designated opportunities. If you would like to make a comment or ask a question, use the raise hand function on Zoom to indicate so, and we will unmute your microphone for you to share. You can also use the chat feature at any time or submit a question using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Okay, and just in case anybody is watching this on the recording, interested members of the public, I happened to notice in the city newsletter that just came out, it still has our start time incorrect. It was listed as 6:30. We have met at 6 o'clock for the last 2.5 years, I think. So back to our first topic, which is to discuss meeting in the library again.
Yes, thank you, John. So the city's liaison to boards and commissions put out some information about beginning conversations with boards and commissions about when each would like to and feels comfortable with meeting once again in person. And I think to a large extent that will depend on each board and commission, as well as the location of those meetings taking place, potentially taking place in person. The city is also exploring technology which would allow for hosting what are essentially being referred to as hybrid meetings, which would allow for participation both in person as well as virtually, but not at the same time for the same person. You can only be in one place. You can either be on site or in the cloud, but you can't be both. We're fortunate in the library in that we currently have the technology in place in the administrative conference room, which is the location where this board has met in the past. And as those of you who have attended meetings in that room know, we have sufficient space to accommodate the full board. And when I say that, of course, I'm referring to the governor's recent decision to lift all requirements for face coverings and social distancing and PPE and so on. And as a consequence, the library has lifted all of those requirements, so no longer requiring face coverings inside of our building, and that includes all of our meeting spaces. So for example, we have been holding meetings in the library conference rooms amongst the staff without requiring face coverings, again, in keeping with the city's current policy. That said, face coverings are optional. We are providing them for both staff and the public who choose to wear them, and also providing hand sanitizer. So if this board wished to, we could begin to meet once again in the library administrative conference room as early as next month. And we currently have the technology, although it's not necessarily state-of-the-art technology, more on that in a minute, that would allow for us to host a hybrid meeting. So we could host our meeting via Zoom for those members of the board who wish to attend virtually, and then also have space available on site for those members of the board who wish to participate in person. And then once the city has completed the purchase of additional and upgraded newer technology, we could put that in place in the meeting room to make that hybrid experience even more beneficial, for lack of a better word.
Well, I'm guessing we're not allowed to ask if everybody's been vaccinated, although we might be allowed to volunteer that information.
I believe that's correct.
So
that said, I should point out that the city is not requiring that the lifting of the mask order by the governor and also by the city manager is not contingent upon vaccination status. So we are not requiring proof of vaccination status, not by City of Beaverton employees. And that also includes members of boards and commissions, as well as members of the public, as a condition to go mask-free. Therefore, we would not be requiring proof nor inquiring about vaccination status prior to attending meetings in person.
So given that, and that you may wear a mask to appear in person,
correct.
I guess I'll ask it this way. Does anybody have any qualms at this point about meeting in person next month? Is everybody comfortable enough with it?
And again, I just want to point out while folks are weighing in and
muted myself. Sorry, go ahead.
We have the technology to provide for both. So if some members of the board wish to continue to participate virtually, we can accommodate that. So one option is we could host the meeting on site. Kristin and I will be there, and whoever wants to join us and attend in person is welcome to do so. And those members of the board who wish to attend virtually may also do so. And so that's another option I just want to put out there, rather than, because I don't want members of the board to feel put on the spot. They have to make a decision tonight. And in fact, I think there's no reason why we couldn't accommodate that and allow individual members of that board to make the decision until the day of the meeting, however comfortable they feel attending, whether that be in person or whether that be virtually.
I think that makes sense.
Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah, I think so. Things may look different in a month anyway. So
excuse me.
Good point.
Yeah, I think that hybrid approach works well. That way, if we're not feeling confident at that moment, we cannot go in, or vice versa.
Yeah,
well,
you have the choice.
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering too, you know, if there was something where someone had it was easier for them to just go, like, not regardless of their vaccination status or COVID or anything, would that be something that people could do just in the future, just as kind of something that they're looking to move towards? Like if there was some sort of something at home where you couldn't get away and you wanted to do it virtually, is that part of that?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Cathy. That's actually part of the city's intent in exploring and investigating technology to permit for hybrid style meetings. And that also includes, by the way, the city council. They're hoping to provide the ability for members of the council to attend those meetings in person as well as virtually, depending on circumstances. So I don't see any reason why going forward, we couldn't permit and provide the opportunity for members of the board to attend either in person or virtually. This does not have to be limited to the pandemic period.
Okay, thank you.
And it's a good point, Cathy. It's something we've actually done in the past with audio, although not video. Once when our board chair was out of town on business, we tried bringing him in by audio, and eventually lost him. It didn't work too well, but we tried. And we did it once with the city council as well. And so I think that can be done. Kathleen?
I just wanted to say how much I appreciate that Just as a sort of chronically ill person, I can't promise how I'm going to feel on a certain day. And so that's just really lovely to hear as an option.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Oh, baby.
Okay, so I think we've resolved that. Then we will plan on scheduling the meeting. And I'm going to put it this way, we'll plan on scheduling the meeting, and it is August 8th. Because the first is a
August
Monday.
the 11th, right? August the 11th is the second.
Is that right? Where did I get the 8th from?
August 11th is a Wednesday.
Okay,
It's the second Wednesday.
You're more likely to be right than I am, so I'm going with that. August 11th will be our next meeting, and we'll plan on that. Obviously, if things get worse or there's any change in city or state guidelines or requirements, we can adapt and continue to meet on Zoom. But we'll plan on, for now, meeting in person with the hybrid option. And that works for Kathleen, so that's a good thing too. And works for everybody, I think. So Mark Sansucci is not here tonight. I don't know, Glenn, you'd asked him if he had anything he wanted you to cover, and I don't know if he responded.
I did not hear back from him, John. So yeah, I'm not sure what, if anything, he wished to share. So did not hear back.
And Kristin sent out the city news. So we'll move on to the foundation report.
Okay, the Library Foundation is, I think as I reported to this board recently, had identified one major project that they were interested in sponsoring, and that was the purchase of an additional library outreach van to add additional capacity to our outreach services. As it happened, the additional half-time outreach specialist that would help to, well, literally drive the van and provide additional outreach services to the community, that did not get approved as part of the internal budget review process. And so, unfortunately, the purchase of that van, at least by the Library Foundation, did not happen. And when I say at least not by the Library Foundation, because as it turns out, thanks to some federal funds, availability of through the American Recovery Act program funds, the library went and applied for a grant through the state library with funds sponsored by funds from the federal government for the purchase of an additional outreach van and funds for the hire of an additional outreach specialist position, half-time position for up to 10 months as a temporary assignment. So more on that in a minute, but so back to the foundation. So since that, that project didn't move ahead, at least as it was developed by a sponsorship by the foundation, we've instead looking at other funding opportunities for the foundation. And there were a number that were proposed recently to the foundation. I think there were a total of 3 projects for their consideration. Unfortunately, they elected not to pursue any of them. And so at the moment, we are sort of back to the drawing board, so to speak, in terms of looking to identify other sponsorship opportunities. And I think some of those may come a little bit later on in the year as the library executive team begins to review next steps in the library's space plan, which this board, some members of the board may be aware that there was a study that was commissioned in essence by my predecessor, Abigail Elder. which was completed in 2018 to conduct a study, essentially a space plan, to renovate the public spaces on both floors of the main library. That study was completed in August of 2018, a month before I came on board and a couple months after Abigail left to take the director position in the mayor's office. And it contains recommendations on renovating public spaces throughout the main library. And as examples of that, the makerspace, which was completed last spring or spring of 2020, which we have yet to open to the public thanks to the pandemic, and the recently completed study rooms, which we also hope to open to the public in the near future, were part of that 2018 space plan. So the executive team hopes to begin a process whereby they will look at, revisit that space plan and develop next steps and identify and highlight which parts of that plan we would like to proceed with next. And the plan, if some members of the board may recall, was designed to develop in a way that we can implement different portions of the plan on a sort of piecemeal basis. So yeah, we don't have to do it all at once, which is helpful because although we have a plan in place that identifies what we want to do, there is no accompanying funding plan for how we want to fund what we want to do. So that's a good thing that we have, the plan is broken out into sort of an a la carte method, which allows us to do things in sort of bite-sized fashion, which makes them more doable from a fundraising standpoint. So long story short, once the executive team has identified next steps in the space plan, I think there's going to be the opportunity to approach the Library Foundation with a major fundraising initiative to say, okay, this is what the library would like to do next, and we would like your assistance and help in making this possible. So nothing concrete to report at this time. Again, until the library executive team has evaluated the space plan and come up with a list of what they want to do next. And once that happens, I will be happy to share that information with this board. But until that time, unless something else comes our way, falls into our lap that is just so enticing that we can't resist sharing it with the foundation as a potential funding opportunity, I think that sort of the next steps for that board would be, and has been ongoing, to try to grow their membership and seek some fundraising assistance in the form of someone with a background and some expertise in that area who might come, for example, from the ranks of our the library volunteers. So we continue those efforts to try to grow the board and look for some assistance with respect to fundraising help.
Okay, any questions about what the foundation is up to? Actually, that sounds good anyway, and they have a chance to sit on and perhaps grow some money in the meantime as well. Since Kathleen is temporarily unavailable, we'll save the Friends report.
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I'm
sure you're ready?
Yes. No, I'm here. I just don't want to. I don't want to flash.
Okay.
So,
no problem.
So there is a lot going on with the Friends at the moment in terms of grants that they're hoping to get, in terms of they're trying to put together a focus group for priority wish lists. They're trying to save up for a book sale. There's just a lot going on with them right now. So let me see if I can find the Cliff Notes. So there's they're hoping for a book sale in October, and so they're trying to come to terms with donations and how to get donations. Do we have enough donations? Do we need to solicit more donations? How to get enough books? Hello, sweetheart. How to get enough books for the book sale? that may or may not be happening, and where to store those. One of their major online retailers, Thrift Books, has stopped operating in this area. So they are trying at the moment to switch to other online retailers. I think that they are doing something called Better World Books, which has a revenue split that is not as advantageous to the Friends as Thrift Books was. However, even aside from this, their June statistics are still pretty good. Everything has continued to be kind of on par with what it's been for the rest of the year. They're trying to also explore, how do we look at eBay? How do we look at Abe Books? How do we get more revenue from these online retailers that we're already working with? They are, as I said, applying for grants. One of the things that they're trying to do is they're trying to be the featured charity in the internal Nike Giving Forum. One of the board members of the Friends is an employee at Nike, and so she is trying to work to make that happen. Let's see. Okay. And they are, again, going to put together a focus group. They already have quite a few groups that they've split off into. So they now have a fundraising group. They have, oh goodness. Sorry, I should just keep my camera turned off. Hey. They have a bunch of different minor subgroups that they're working to do different things with. So now they have a group that's trying to make a wish list for all the grants that they are applying for and trying to get. They really need to figure out what to do with that money, especially considering potential changes in the future. So do they upgrade the computers that they have at the bookstore if they may not be in that space for in the foreseeable future? So there's a lot going on at the Friends.
Do you know what the store hours are now? Are they back open regularly?
I believe.
Oh, I think we lost her. I think the baby ended the meeting for them.
Yes.
That's just a guess.
I think we'll have to come back to that later then. And I don't want to bring up the other new business topic without Kathleen here. So we'll move on to the director's report. And we'll probably interrupt you in the middle and try to pick up where we left off with the other things.
Well, it looks like Kathleen is coming back, John.
Okay.
Here she comes. I think.
Sorry. I was sabotaged.
We guessed this.
So one of the, John, so in terms of hours for the store right now, I think one of the things that they're dealing with is volunteers and how to handle volunteers coming back. Because I think they're still on the fence about who wants to come back and how many volunteers can be in one place, and how to make that happen in the right way to get everything to come back as normal.
And if nobody on the Friends board knows, eBay has just recently raised their fees. And they're charging, I think it's a 25% commission on books now. And it's actually considerably worse than it sounds, because eBay charges the sellers not just the selling price, but also the cost of shipping. So if it's something that is $30 and it costs $5 to ship, you're paying 25% of the $35. It's pretty ugly. It also makes it really, really difficult to sell low ticket items, which a lot of books are. So, I mean, you just, practically speaking, you can't sell a book for $1 or $2.
A lot of the eBay sales come from high sellers. So things that they sell for above average amounts.
Right.
Big ticket items.
Okay, and we'll move on to the agenda item of possibly amending the bylaws to give some additional responsibilities to the vice chair role. Has anybody had a chance to look at that and come up with any ideas? Does anybody have any thoughts? Okay. I'm going to, for the moment, table this, and I won't bring it up again. Just a second, Kathleen. I was just going to say before, then I'll get to you. But if you see something in the future and you would like to bring it up, feel free to do so at any meeting. I do want to caution the board that any changes we would like to make have to be approved by the city council. So we need some lead time to make that happen to be applicable to the 2022 calendar year officers. Okay, go ahead, Kathleen.
Okay, so something that I've found very advantageous in being the vice chair this year is being the liaison to the Friends. And so I'm wondering if there's any way that we could potentially make that either permanent, or if that can be one of the duties of the vice chair is being liaison to either. Because that's been, that's been very beneficial for me.
I think it's a great idea. And I talked to Roger a couple of months ago, the president of the Friends. He had discussed sending representatives to our meetings as well as having you attending theirs. And I told him that anybody was welcome anytime. So, I mean, I think for the communication to happen, it can be somebody from either group attending the others. I don't know that we necessarily need both, but both is certainly a good thing too.
Oh, we lost Kathleen again.
Does anybody have any thoughts on Kathleen's suggestion? One of you will be vice chair next year.
That's what I'm thinking, like, I can't be there for the library and for the Friends if I am going to participate. That's my situation. I'm not, I don't know about others. That should not be a constraint to become a vice chairman.
Anybody else have any thoughts? Would you like to vote on making being Friends liaison an official responsibility of the vice chair? Or for that matter, foundation liaison? Because we have in the past had a foundation liaison from our board as well.
Glenn has been doing an excellent job as the foundation liaison, but he also gives us the director's report, and it may relieve some of that responsibility on him if it was another board member that was the liaison.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Just in the interest of full disclosure, and thank you, Kathleen, I appreciate that. I also sit on the board. I don't know if I'm officially ex officio or not on the foundation board, so I attend those meetings anyway. But if this board would like to appoint a representative to that group, I certainly have no objections. And if that person would like to report out and perhaps be a more objective report than I might otherwise do, I certainly have no objections and would welcome the participation.
I would strongly encourage it if anyone's thinking about it. Like I said, it has been a very good learning experience for me to be on the Friends board. It's been wonderful to learn a little bit more about the other side.
I think it's a real good point, and it also helps being a liaison to either or both boards helps prepare the vice president for becoming the chair, should that happen, which would be a common progression. Glenn?
John, I have a question. So in the past, how has this board elected or appointed, for lack of a better word, liaisons to the Friends?
We asked for volunteers.
Okay.
And that can continue to happen. And also, it's not really a reminder because we have several people who don't actually know this because the past year and a half has been so abnormal. But we did start a tradition, and we did it, I think, somebody can help me with this, I think 3 years in a row, where we had a joint meeting with our board, the Friends board, the Foundation board, and the library management team. And there were great meetings, really interesting, and the members of each group got to know each other, which is a very good thing, I think. And you know, I would expect that we would resume that next year. It may be a little late this year to do that, but that's something we could talk about too. So I think there will be communication. It doesn't have to be an official responsibility, but I think Kathleen's suggestion is a great one. I like it.
Yeah, I agree with John. I have attended the meeting. It is a very good teamwork building there, and a very collaboration meeting. You can, the information shared between the teams are very useful, and you can also develop your networking there.
Any other thoughts? Would you like to vote on that amendment to our bylaws?
Do you need a motion, John?
Yes, I guess somebody would need to make a motion.
I make a motion to vote to add that responsibility to our bylaws, that the vice chair be the liaison of either the Friends or the Foundation.
Okay, let's leave it at that too. So it could be any either or, at the vice chair's choice.
I think so. So I haven't been on the Foundation board, so I'm not sure how that would be different, or which would be more beneficial. I'd welcome some kind of conversation about that if anyone has any insights.
Glenn?
I can provide some information. So the Foundation board meets the first Wednesday of the month, typically 6 p.m. And the Friends board meets, I believe is it the third Wednesday? Kristin, is that correct?
I thought it's Tuesday.
Yeah, it's the third Tuesday now.
Third Tuesday.
They moved it.
Okay. Is that also at 6 p.m. then?
5:30.
5:30. Okay. And are those meetings currently being held virtually, Kathleen?
Yes, and they were every other month at the beginning of the year, but I think because of all the changes, they wanted to increase the frequency of the meetings, so those are now monthly.
So at some point, however, they may go back to every other month?
Yes, potentially. Okay.
So that would be important for this board to know as well, that in terms of the time commitment.
Mm-hmm.
They're an hour and a half, or?
Usually, they tend to go long. They have a lot of business to go over, especially now that they've broken into the smaller groups. Everyone has something to report at the meetings.
So the obligation would be an hour and a half to 2 hours a month, maybe, which is not a lot. Especially if you're not doing any other volunteer work for the library. And I know many of you are.
As liaison, you don't have to do much. You just kind of sit there and let them do their board stuff, take notes, and speak up about the advisory board. So it's not a lot of commitment.
Then can I get a second for Kathleen's motion? Okay, if nobody wants to second it, it will be tabled, I think. I sort of pocket vetoed, I guess.
I think, just to clarify, I'm a alternate, so I can't second it, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yes.
Right.
So, John, perhaps the members of the board just need some more time to consider, think it over, and maybe, to your point, we could take it up at your discretion, whether it's next month's meeting or thereafter.
Really, I think any time is fine, again, with the caveat that it will need to be approved by the city council if we change our bylaws. And that happens on their timetable, not ours.
Yeah, just so if I could just add some insight into that process. So there is some lead time on that. It would most likely end up on the consent agenda. I don't imagine that the city council would be interested in debating that. But there is some lead time to put that in the form of an agenda bill and then get that on the council's agenda. So we're looking at a lead time, I would say probably several weeks minimum or a couple weeks minimum.
Okay, so that does give you plenty of time. And really, I encourage you to please take a look at the bylaws between now and August and take a close look. Any of the chair's responsibilities that may be shifted to the vice chair as well. I think both are good ideas, but we do need the lead time, and we'll want to implement it with the change in officers at the start of next year.
Would it be helpful if I send out the bylaws again? I think I sent them out a couple months ago. I will. I'll send the bylaws out to everybody this week, just as a reminder.
Good idea.
I think that's good.
Thank you.
Very good suggestion. Okay. That being all we have to say on that for the moment, let's move on to the director's report.
Okay, very good. Thank you, John. Speaking of city business, although I know that the counselor isn't here, I just a quick reminder for the board that the new incoming permanent city manager, Jenny Haruyama, who is currently the city manager in the city of Tracy, California, Northern California, who is also a colleague acquaintance of our interim city manager, Kurt Wilson. So the two know of each other. She is, her first day will be August the 24th. And meanwhile, she and our interim city manager, Kurt Wilson, have been meeting, I think on a weekly basis to share for purposes of our interim city manager to bring her up to speed on important initiatives in the city and other related business so that Jenny can hit the ground running, as it were. And she's been attending meetings here and there as her schedule permits, virtually, of course, including there was an all library supervisors meeting that occurred Tuesday of this week, just yesterday, in which she participated, and she had some words of praise for what she heard during the meeting in terms of the content of the meeting and the quality of the meeting, and expressed her enthusiasm and excitement in joining the city and working with the city's leadership group. In the meantime, our interim city manager, Kurt Wilson, continues to serve in this interim capacity, although somewhat limited, because in the meantime, he's accepted another assignment as the executive director for the county of Riverside, California, which is comprised, I think, of about 68 cities. So it's a major assignment. So he's taken that on while also doing some duties on behalf of the city of Beaverton. He's also being assisted by the city's former assistant finance director, Dave Waffle, whom some of you may know as a former city manager of the city of Cornelius. So Dave has been assisting Kurt, and my capacity as library director for the city, my weekly one-on-one meetings with the city manager have shifted now to meeting with Dave, who's serving as the assistant city manager. And that will continue at least until our new city manager is hired. Speaking of the assistant city manager position, some members of this board may be aware that that position was approved as part of the budget process. And that will be filled at the discretion of the new city manager. But in the meantime, that position is being filled, as I mentioned, by Dave Waffle. Moving on to personnel, we have some recruitments in process, some recently concluded, including we had a successful recruitment for a new position, and that is a supervisor for our materials division, or what we call team, who will be starting on August the 8th. So we're very excited about that. And we recently concluded a similar process to hire a new supervisor in our public services / reference area, which unfortunately did not end in a hire. We had a preferred candidate, but they declined our offer. So we will be going out and restarting that search in the near future. And we also recently filled one half of our vacant librarian position. So we've divided that vacancy into two parts. The first of which is a collections half, so 20 hours devoted to serving as one of our selectors for a major portion of our collection. And that position was filled recently by Allison Simpson, who started on July the 5th. And she's currently in training and for all intents and purposes appears to be a great hire. So we're very happy to have her. The second part of that position, which will be devoted to technology and programming, we are awaiting the hire of the new supervisor for that position to undertake that search. So there will be a little bit of a waiting period. We also recently completed a recruitment process for the replacement of our bilingual reference assistant position as a replacement for Liz Beth, who recently took on filled a vacant position as one of our outreach specialists. And the recruitment for her replacement also unfortunately ended without a hire. We extended an offer, and that offer was unfortunately declined. So we will be also restarting that search process. And then we recently posted a new half-time position for a permanent volunteer program coordinator. That was an internal posting that went up last Friday and will come down this Friday. And that position replaces our full-time volunteer manager position. And the previous incumbent in that position, Jennifer Johnson, continues to be on assignment as the city's diversity, equity, and inclusion project manager. Yeah, so that concludes all of our recruitments. And then another position we had identified but was not approved as part of the internal budget process for this current fiscal year, which just started 14 days ago, was a assistant library director position. So some members of the board may be aware that there are 2 departments in the city that do not have either an assistant director or deputy, as the case may be, and that is HR and the library. And I believe it was 2 fiscal years ago, 3 director position for various departments in the city were approved. I believe they were, memory serves, community development, public works, and there was a 3rd, which I can't think of at the moment, which left the library and HR as the only 2 departments without an assistant director or deputy. So we put in for an assistant library director position for this fiscal year. It did not get approved as part of the internal budget review process. And we will be revisiting that, that position probably sometime this fall in a run up to next year's fiscal year budgeting process, which will, at the recommendation of the budget committee and our interim city manager, will likely begin earlier than in the past. So in the past, our budget process officially kicked off in January. And there's good reason to believe that that process will occur sometime in the fall. So in anticipation of that, the library executive team is going to be revisiting that position. And then in terms of training for staff, the city hired back in the fall, the city contracted with an organization called SciComms to conduct a citywide survey of city employees related to matters of diversity, equity, inclusion. And they prepared a report based on that survey, and then developed a series of recommendations for individual city departments, including the library. And there were 6 library-specific recommendations. And part of their recommendations for the city as a whole was some additional training for all city employees, beginning with department heads and supervisors and manager, and then the rest of the city staff. Some follow-up trainings on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So those trainings began last month, starting with department heads, and I participated in a 3-hour training. And then supervisors and managers received their training, believe earlier this month. And then starting later this month through the beginning of September, there will be similar trainings provided for all City of Beaverton employees, and that training will be mandatory. Earlier today, the library executive team met with the city's diversity, equity, inclusion project manager to discuss how we might implement the 6 library specific recommendations. So we had a good discussion about that. There were some very good suggestions on how to do that and how to proceed. And so I will apprise this board as we identify concrete plans and timelines for how we might implement that work. So just want this board to know that that is in the works, and that is a priority item as established by the City Council. And so that's something that we will be continuing with and will become a priority for us as well. So I'll keep the board apprised as we move ahead with those plans. We will also continue to operationalize phase 2 of the library reorganization and reassigning staff and working with them and updating their individual responsibilities and reporting relationships. And that's been a smooth process overall. It's also kept Kristin quite busy, as we have had to do a lot of work behind the scenes and reassigning staff to their new supervisors. So I want to publicly thank her for her work on that. As I said, that work is going well, and will also, part of that work involve the identification of and recruitment of and ultimately hiring of those new supervisor positions to allow our managers to free them up so that they can spend less time on day-to-day operational type issues and devote more of their time to strategic planning and other projects and initiatives on behalf of their individual teams and the library as a whole. So we're getting closer. As I said, we've got a new a new supervisor for a materials division coming on board next month. So we're getting closer to getting up to full steam on those efforts. In terms of our current services, so with the lifting of the mask and PPE and physical distancing requirements, that has also allowed us to lift all of our capacity limits for both locations. So we no longer have any limits on how many people can be in the building or how much time they spend in the building. We're also slowly bringing back more furniture, more places for patrons to sit and tables to sit at. We also had somewhat of a surprise visit earlier this week from our social worker from Community Action, who reported to duty. Actually, I think it was beginning last week, until it was discovered that the contract between the city and Community Action had not been signed. Once that was discovered, we realized that meant that we would have to put that work temporarily on hiatus until that contract is signed and is official. But we were very pleased to see how eager our partner organization was to return to the library and provide those much needed social work services 3 days a week, which includes assistance on housing, utilities, mental health, and related services. And now that the study rooms have been completed, one of those rooms is available to serve as an office, a semi-private office for the social worker from Community Action. So they were very excited to see the new space. And once that contract has been signed, hopefully soon, they will be back on site 3 days a week, providing bilingual English and Spanish services for members of our community. We are also looking, as John alluded to at the top of the meeting, expanded our hours of operation. Once we have, we're currently working out all the necessary scheduling arrangements and adjustments that have to take place. And looking forward to the day when we can resume and go back to our full schedule, similar to what it was during pre-pandemic times. Moving ahead to facilities, as I mentioned, the study rooms have recently been completed. For the most part, we're just awaiting the installation of some low voltage wiring so that we can connect our iPad devices for scheduling purposes, and also install and connect the flat screen monitors that are scheduled to go into those spaces. So we're just awaiting word from our facilities department on when that work will be completed. And then as far as our makerspace, we're hoping to make that space available and open it to the public, and probably do a combined opening and ribbon cutting for both of those spaces, to which members of this board will be invited, along with members of the city council, city managers and friends and so on. So I will keep this board apprised of progress on that, as well as dates once we're able to establish them for the opening of those spaces. Just a brief update on the Book Corner integration project. Negotiations are still ongoing with the developer. The city has entered into exclusive negotiations with the developer. The last update I received from my colleague in community development who was leading those negotiations is they were still ongoing. There will be I believe it's a work session next month presented by the lead in community development to apprise the city council of those negotiations. But as I mentioned, as of today, the most recent information I have is that those negotiations are ongoing. So hopefully they can be concluded successfully in the near future, but I don't have any more information on when that might occur. Similarly, with the South Cooper Mountain development, as this board may recall, part of that development included a new branch library, which would replace the branch at the Murray Hills location. And those, the city also has entered into exclusive negotiations with the developer that has been approved by the city council, which is Wishcamper Developers. And the most recent information I have is similarly, those negotiations are ongoing. So no date as to when those negotiations may be concluded, and which of course the timing of that will impact any work on the plans for the library in that space. So I will, of course, continue to keep this board apprised of any future developments. I already touched upon the library space plan. And moving on to programming, I am very pleased to announce that we have resumed our in-person story times starting last week outside on the library lawn. Our first story time attracted a very diverse crowd of residents, families, and children and families and caregivers, and was attended by 85 participants. Today's story time drew more than 100 participants. So we were extremely pleased with the turnout. And then this afternoon, we also held in a concrete leaf making event with teens, and a smaller turnout, but because there's only so many concrete leaves that you can make after all, but a very enthusiastic group. And so we're very excited about our ability to once again offer in-person programming. Related to that, we continue to do outreach, giving away free books at the Beaverton School District free lunch sites, and also outreach to city parks and to the Beaverton School District Camp Achieve sites, which have been happening earlier this month. And those are going well, and we're very excited about that. Some of the members of this board may be aware that the governor announced recent new temporary rules, Oregon OSHA, to protect Oregon worker health and safety during extreme heat events, starting when the heat index is 80 degrees and above, which requires employers to provide a combination of shade, water, and additional breaks, depending on what the heat index is, again, beginning at 80 degrees. It also requires employers to provide training for supervisors and staff on those new measures. So we are working with our colleagues in the city to come up with a citywide implementation procedures. In the meantime, the library leadership team is met to begin implementing those new rules effective immediately. As of today, we have acquired insulated water bottles that we will be providing all of our staff who do outreach and also outdoor programming. So they will have those on hand. All of our programs are done in places which do fortunately provide ample shade. And we'll make sure that staff get their appropriate extra breaks as needed, depending on the heat index. We are also moving on to the library cooperative. A major initiative that the cooperative has undertaken recently is to renegotiate all of the intergovernmental agreements with all of the member libraries. That was pushed off by a year due to the pandemic. And those agreements cover our basic service agreement with the County Library Cooperative and also our computer network agreement. So those negotiations have begun. And I'm also serving on a committee that is looking at the service boundaries for all member libraries, which the last time they were updated, I believe, was 2014. So we've had held several meetings with that group and coming up with recommendations for the Library Cooperative Executive Board for how we might want to, for recommendations for new service boundaries. So some members of this board may be aware that each member library's service boundary includes not only their municipal boundary, or in the case of library associations, their service boundary, but also includes in most cases portions of unincorporated Washington County. So for example, Beaverton City Library service boundary includes a mix of combination of City of Beaverton municipal boundary as well as unincorporated Washington County, and which includes a total service population of approximately 150,000 people. And then moving on to the library strategic plan, we have, as reported earlier to this board, we have developed mission, vision, values, and strategic directives. We're currently working on goals for the current fiscal year, both individual library team goals as well as library-wide goals. And hope to have more information to share at either the August or the September meeting on what those goals look like. And then I also want to share that, as mentioned, yeah, we have submitted a grant for a new outreach van and outreach specialist on a 10-month assignment. And volunteers. We have recently began bringing back library volunteers to work on site, including pulling of holds and doing processing at both library locations. We're very excited to see our volunteers back on site and hoping that we can add more in the coming months. And then second to last, the State Library recently released its 2020 or 2021 rather, State Library Statistical Report with new COVID reporting guidelines, which is due on October 31st. So we're always excited to see that. That's an annual report that where we report out all of our statistics for the year. And that again is due on October 31st. And then lastly, I just want to mention that I will be on vacation starting on August the 2nd through the 20th. And I will try to provide a substitute for next month's meeting. Either that, I will be attending virtually from Chicago, or I will be spending my time looking after my father and my sister. And so that concludes my the director's report for the month, and I would be happy to entertain any questions from the board, members of the board.
Wow, you covered so many major things, and I had several. I hope I can remember half of them. Can you share with us a little bit about your thoughts for the job description for the assistant director, should that position happen next year? Yes,
from memory. That position would be responsible for one of their major initiatives would be serving essentially as the chief operating officer for the library. And that would include overall responsibility for supervision, policies and procedures. They would also be responsible for overseeing and keeping tabs on and making sure that major projects and initiatives move ahead. That is an extremely important element of that job, which we currently don't have the capacity to do. And then also strategic planning, assisting with budgeting, serving as the acting director in place of the library director, working with boards and commissions and city council, as well as liaison to other community partners, whether they be other governmental bodies or community organizations, and also helping to promote and advocate on behalf of the library. So they'll have their, excuse me, fingers in a lot of pies, but really the main focus of their work would be as chief operating officer and developing and implementing policies and procedures, and also overseeing major projects and initiatives.
A lot. Definitely sounds like there's a need. And with the possibility of a branch on Cooper Mountain, that would be something, a new building built by the city, correct? With funding source to be determined, is that, or is that known?
So that the branch library is as proposed is part of the new South Cooper Mountain development, which is immediately west of the not the South Ridge High School, but Mountain View High School in the South Cooper Mountain area, Mountainside High School, excuse me. And that is a mixed, as proposed, a mixed use development. So it has a mix of affordable and market rate housing, as well as retail space, with, as proposed, the library as the anchor. And that library would ultimately replace the library in the Murray Hill Shopping Center. And at least as initially proposed, it would be developed by the developer, who would take the lead on working with the designers and the architects and building out the actual library space itself, and then eventually turn that over to the city. The funding from that would most likely come from, if I remember correctly, bonds, but I'm not entirely certain. So please don't quote me, as it were, on that. As initially proposed, at least, it would be essentially a turnkey development, whereby the developer would take the lead on working with the designer and the architect with final approval by the city on whom the architect and designer would be, but eventually, essentially would be turning that space over to the city for ownership. So we would have one of the benefits, I'm sorry, just the last thought, John. One of the benefits would be we would have the ability to design a new library space from the ground floor up, as opposed to taking over an existing space that wasn't necessarily designed to be a library space.
So eventually that would free up money for the library, I'm guessing, by not having the lease expenditure for the current Murray Shoals location.
You just reminded me, thank you, where the funding is going to come from. Thank you. It would come from the savings of the funds that we're currently paying towards the lease of the new space, would go, no doubt, towards paying off the bond, if memory serves, yes. So it wouldn't necessarily result in any savings, but rather we would be redirecting funds that's currently going towards a lease to ultimately pay off what will probably be bonds, which would eventually end up result in ownership of that space. Similar to how the city went out and took bonds to pay for the construction of the main library, which were, I think, paid off. I think it was approximately 2 years ago, or about a 20-year process. So it would be, my understanding it would be a similar process.
Let me see, am I on? I wanted to check if I was muted. So John, like Murray Shoals, that's so it would be basically another commercial space, like strip mall type area with the library owning the library building. Did I understand that right? Or
similar. So it won't be necessarily a commercial, entirely commercial. It will actually be a mixed use.
Okay.
Yeah, combination of residential, again, affordable and market rate housing.
Right. Yeah, you
Along
mentioned that.
with commercial space, and then ultimately the building in which the library would be owned by the city of Beaverton.
That would be owned by the city. Okay. All right, it's cool.
I had a question about volunteers, if we don't mind shifting focus a little bit. So the Friends are having an issue right now with volunteers because they're trying to figure out who's willing to come back and how do we get volunteers in the safe space. How is the library dealing with those issues?
Well, similarly, Kathleen, we are also working through many of those same issues in that, and I don't know what the percentages are, but there are certain, did we lose her again? Oh, I guess we'll come back to that question once Kathleen returns.
Any other questions for Glenn? A lot of stuff going on. Somebody must have some questions.
Lot of things to remember. But the library, are you planning to be the exact like the main library, or it's going to be the like branch one in Cooper Mountain?
Yes, Sarah, the South Cooper Mountain branch will be, it will not attempt to replicate what we're doing at home. And we haven't worked out the program in terms of that is, what we want to do in that space. But I'm guessing that services on behalf of children and their families and caregivers will comprise a large component part of that, similar to how it does currently at the Murray Shoals branch, just given the needs and the demographic of that part of the city. That said, I suspect that based on the interest level and as well as some recommendations from the Community Services and Engagement Department, formerly the Mayor's Office, there will probably be space in the new branch library for meeting space, for city programs and events, including library programs, as well as meeting space for residents and community organizations to help fill a need.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So Kathleen, I want to get back to your question about volunteers. So we are, similarly, there's a certain percentage, and I don't know the exact numbers, of volunteers who, some of whom are quite anxious to come back on site and sort of chomping at the bit, as it were, to do so. And then there are others who are quite happy to continue to wait and or work remotely to the extent that we can provide and identify opportunities for them to do so remotely. And then we're also, some of the things that we're working through is as we slowly bring back more staff to the building, that is also opening up and playing into and a factor in determining how many, to what extent, and the timeline for when we can bring back more volunteers on site. So there's quite a few factors to take into consideration. But we're working through all of them and hoping to continue to increase the number of volunteers that we're able to bring back on site. But it's a slow process, and we want to do so in a way that's very thoughtful, methodical, in a way that works for everyone involved, and of course, it continues to ensure everyone's health and safety.
Thank you, Glenn.
Any other questions? Well, for next month, one thing that I think the board would be very interested in, Glenn, and I know you won't be here, but maybe you can make this happen since we're at the start of the fiscal year. I think it would be a great time for an update on the library of things. And, you know, possibly Michelle has a list of items she's planning to purchase for this year at this point. And if, you know, if we could get just some of the highlights from that, that would be terrific.
Sure.
And anything else anybody would like to see specifically? I think everybody's suffering from too much heat or something.
Zoom fatigue.
Zoom fatigue.
I'll offer that one. I know I'm feeling the residual effects, and I'm sure Kristin would, I suspect, echo or at least can relate to those sentiments.
Yes, yes.
Glenn, can we have the summer reading program for adult, how it goes and how much hours have been covered for the Meals on Wheels or any?
Yes.
That could be nice to have next month, or if you have anything on top of your head, you can share it with us.
You know, Sarah, I will add that to next month's meeting. I could tell you, yes, we have, the program is in full swing for children, teens, and adults. As Sarah mentioned, the adult program is in conjunction with Meals on Wheels. So if you read a certain amount, then that will automatically trigger another meal, sponsored meal for a family in need. And then the children's, the theme of the children's program is Reading Colors Your World. And we've begun this week or was it last week? Can't remember. Giving away the summer reading prizes for those youth who have completed a certain amount of reading. I was on hand to greet the first parent and child who came in to claim their prize. I think the parent was actually more excited than the child, but it was very exciting to see their excitement. We have a really good mix of prizes. But I will make sure that we will provide a more complete report for next month.
Sure, Glenn. Thank you. And I have a, when I went for the branch last week, you have, I need some printouts. You're not charging for the printouts. I came to know that that was a good one you have not shared with us, but it's a very good community service.
Yeah.
I don't know when you're going to bring back that charges, but it's a nice one to do during the pandemic. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you for bringing that up, Sarah. Yeah, we decided, at least in the interim, not to charge for printing and copying. We have not made a decision, or at least a recommendation to this board, on whether or not to do that. Once the library leadership team has had an opportunity to discuss that and come up with a recommendation, we'll bring that to this board. If for example, we decide to make a change, we will bring that to this board for their discussion and vote on that. But thank you for bringing that up, and I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, it showed for me like it charges the amount, and by practice I inserted my coin into the machine and it was not giving me the balance, and I inquired. They said no charges, and then we went through the process. It was my practice. When we take a printout, I just like put the coin in, and she made the modification on the machine, like we are not charging right now.
Like hitting the jackpot.
Glenn, I'd be interested to hear how circulation, physical and ebook, has changed since you've opened up the library to everybody now, just to see if there's been any change at all, or if more people are staying with ebooks, or what's actually been the result of the opening of the library.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, for my suggestion, as the temperature have raised, you might have the ebooks still, even though the libraries have opened. In person, like weather is not supporting in person in everywhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can tell you that the data for June just came out, and I believe we were, compared to last year, overall circulation down about 23%. Physical circulation down about 25%. No, more than that. I don't remember the exact figure off the top of my head, but I'll get that information to you. And ebook circulation or digital circulation, which also includes audiobooks, was up by about 25% compared to last year. But I'll get you the full report, and we'll report that at next month's meeting.
Thanks, Glenn. Just interested to see how July is different since now we're open.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see if, I mean, you're thinking along the lines of, have people changed their habits permanently, or are people eager to get back to physical media?
Yeah, no idea.
Yeah, and the real challenge, to be honest, is when we compare our data to last year was an anomaly.
So 2 years ago, I guess.
So, right. So I think in some respects, a more valid comparison would probably be to 2019. I mean, it'd be interesting to look at, last year, but I think, for all intents and purposes, a more valid one might be to 2019.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And Glenn, how did you manage for the high temperature dates with the community? So is there a lot of person inside the library during the high temperatures?
So we made both library locations, we kept, they served as cooling centers during our normal hours, during the recent heat wave. And then after hours, in conjunction with the city's emergency management division and staffed by members of the Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT, we turned the Cathy Stanton room into an after hours cooling center on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Or no, it was
It's probably right.
Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, I believe. And, or maybe it started on Saturday, but at least Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And the first day we had, I think, 18 people who took advantage of that. And then the next 2 days, the numbers were in the 30s. And then the last day it was down to about 9 people, I think the final day. And we also provided folks with water. We had a local church get in touch with us, and they provided us with leftover meals from their Sunday meal program. And then of course we had restrooms available for folks. And the members of CERT actually opened the facility earlier than advertised because they were on site earlier, and so folks who were there at the library were able to take advantage, and for those who, and there were a certain number who chose and preferred to be in the cooling center as opposed to the library space itself, even while the library was open. So hats off to the members of the CERT team for making that space available and even expanding the hours.
Thank you, Glenn.
Well, we're past 7:30. Does anybody have anything else before we adjourn? Brad?
I had one thing real quick because I'll forget it by next meeting probably. I had a verbal comment about the library. A guy, I've known him from Beaverton Chamber, but he said, yeah, tell the library they're doing a great job. He says he's always got a book out, and I think he said he gets about 1 book out a week. He uses an app and it works seamlessly apparently to reserve his book and get it out. Anyway, I asked him if he had anything more specific, but that's the substance of really what he gave to me. So I told him I'd pass it along.
Great.
I'm glad you brought that up because I almost forgot. Kristin did send out the comment cards, and now that we're open to the public more hours, we're back to getting some. I didn't see anything particularly notable in there, but did anybody have any comments on any of the comment cards?
No, all the things said good. The library is doing good.
Also, I read one comment that mentioned that the computer service is really very good, and it helped that patron very much in his or her business. I think that's very good for the library to have such great service to the public.
I agree.
Thank you, May. Yeah, we were very pleased to see that comment, and it serves as a really important and helpful reminder that we're also serving members of the business community, small business owners and entrepreneurs.
For the small business, especially.
Yeah, in some cases, they don't have access to either broadband internet or computers or whatever the case may be.
This helped them a lot.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful.
Yeah,
and the digital resources are really huge for small businesses too. And that usage is kind of invisible to us because it's something that there's no data on. We may know the total usage, but I think they're just invaluable services. I'm sorry, somebody was about to say something.
No, in conjunction with that, are you still providing the hotspots around the library?
Yes, in fact, Sarah, we could provide more information on that next month because those devices are part of our Library of Things. So as they say, stay tuned.
Sure, maybe next month you will be very, very virtual. Not like, and we don't want to disturb you on the vacations. Maybe after next month we can have the report.
Well, I'll do my best to try to find a substitute who can fill in for me next month.
Although, please don't feel obligated to come otherwise. Although on the other hand, you know how taken care of your father is, and you may welcome the quote work unquote, responsibility is an excuse for a little bit of respite from caregiving yourself. So whichever works best for you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, does anybody have anything else real quick?
No, this is not at all related to the board. Kathleen, did your daughter turn 1?
2 weeks.
In another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. Then advance wishes from us. I still remember seeing as a baby, and now today she's walking. And then I thought like,
grow up.
Yes.
Advance
wishes for
I
thank
can't have
you.
her on the couch with me anymore because she's too active now. So now I'm in her room. She's logged me out, I think, 3 or 4 times tonight. So we may have
Very tech savvy.
very tech savvy. And get off the computer. Pay attention to me.
Yeah, she is the youngest team board member so far.
And please let me know at any point if she's distracting. I'm more than happy to turn off my camera.
It's a very enjoyable distraction.
As Glenn said, we all are having the Zoom athletic. This is like a good one for us.
Yeah, and you probably can't see it, Kathleen, because you're too occupied at the time, but every time she appears on the screen, everybody else is grinning from ear to ear.
Yeah, they're talking about you.
Someone did have something else to say.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Okay, so on that happy note, next month we will attempt to meet in person on August 11th in the library. And I guess there are a few of you who have never actually been in the boardroom before. So it is on the east side of the library, in the northeast corner of the library. So go to the reference section and turn right. There's a little bathroom there, and then the boardroom. Kristin's office is right next to that. If you've been to Glenn's office, his is next to Kristin's. So you know your way around a little bit. And
second floor.
Second floor, yes. Should have said that. And you know, we'll look forward to seeing everybody. Wear a mask if you feel more comfortable wearing a mask. And if you don't feel comfortable coming in person, we'll experiment with the hybrid mode. So thank you very much tonight for participating. I'm going to call the meeting adjourned at 7:40.
Thank you.
Thank you.